Hello and welcome to the Advocates on PlusTV Africa. Your reminder that important conversations are among the necessary tools for a saner society. Today, I am talking about the Nigerian academic situation, and Felix educates us on lessons from the Kenyan elections, and Sizi Matthew is talking about monitoring quality education. As always, your panelists are here to share ideas aimed at provoking thoughts with no holds barred. Stay with us. According to Idowu Koyenekon, the mind is just like a muscle. The more you exercise it, the stronger it gets, and the more it can expand. I can't help reflecting on the above statement and imagine how much damage we have been inflicted with as a nation, just because our leaders have refused to give attention to the one important factor that can make us stronger, guarantee global expansion, and foster sustainable growth. Globally, there are two distinct sectors of every economy that must be given full priority if the nation, like the muscle, must grow stronger, expand, and succeed. All the nations that are acclaimed to be prosperous today are those who have sacrificed everything to ensure their education and health sectors receive the utmost attention. By investing in education, governments have empowered their citizens and provided expanded opportunities and platforms for them to compete favorably with other nations across the world. It is unheard of that a nation such as ours, Nigeria, with the overwhelming capacity to compete and humble the world with her arrays of human, material, and financial resources, has been adamant about exercising the sector. Through education empowerment, citizens are able to develop themselves, become better equipped to create solutions to the everyday emerging challenges across various sectors of development, either through the private or public sectors. I cannot overemphasize that by investing in the health sector, government can positively influence the quality of life of our citizens. This can be broken down to a regular and easy access to medical support for every category of human in our society, ranging from girls, women, elderly people, children, people with any form of health challenge, etc. Unfortunately, we live in a society where access to basic first aid will take setting up committee upon committee before considerations will be made after several months, and eventually, upon approval, one funny insect or termite or pest will devour the voucher or check. This is a shame, and one begins to wonder how long we will continue to live like this as a nation. Acclaimed to be the giant of Africa, we cannot continue to brag and condone fathers, mothers, uncles, aunties, friends, and relatives who are sitting on our collective prosperity as a nation, while all we do is to celebrate them for sharing some portion of the ill-gotten wealth just to provide us food enough to suppress our awareness and ability to demand change. We cannot continue like this, but we must rise and face our challenges head-on, knowing that if we do nothing, nothing will happen. And like the unexercised muscle, we will become weaker, rusty, and eventually worn out. Unfortunately, it is already happening, but we can do something about it if we decide to do so. What do you think, Felix?
Well, education is like the way of refining resources. Let me give you an example. Those days, early days in this section of the world, we are concerned about resources, natural resources beneath the earth's surface. You have to drill them and refine them into different products to grow wealth. Now, there is a shift in perspective that the wealthiest of the nation has resources that is between the ears of the humans living there, your brain. So the only way to develop the humans is through education, so that they can grow and contribute to the development of their countries. So that's why you have countries like in Africa, like Nigeria, we are blessed with so many natural resources, but we are still poor in some aspects. And then you have some countries that are almost a desert, and they are also one of the richest.
You know, it's interesting because, you know, while I was, like I said, I was reflecting on a lot of things that have happened in Nigeria. I am privileged to have, you know, visited a couple of countries in the past couple of, in the past couple of years, and I can really see how much these two sectors, the education and the health sectors, are really very pivotal, very, very, very key to the success and the growth of any nation. Take, for instance, just like we mentioned, a muscle has to be exercised to have, to gain strength, and you can use it to be very useful. In the past 6 months, over 180 days, Nigeria, they have been on strike. And it's very unheard of because, let's take the human mind. I imagine a situation where students have to go to school. So you have students who are constantly being taxed with assignments. So you have to run, either you want to do assignments, you want to carry out a quiz, there is a lecture, you are rushing for one project, you are rushing for examination. And as you are running to meet up with those demands, the mind is being taxed with assignments, making it renewed, making it ability to think, critical thinking, you're able to navigate through challenges, right? And now for 6 months, somebody is dormant in the house. There is nobody asking them for a quiz, nobody asking them to come for an assignment, nobody talking about a particular lecture that is being held at a particular time, nobody pushing them to really think outside the box. What happens after a while? The mind, like the muscle, begins to grow weaker. Inability to think, weakness in processing thought. So you see a full-fledged adult, a full-fledged young person who cannot answer simple questions, not because they are not intelligent, but because the mind, like the muscle, is growing weaker. I don't really know. Matthew, what do you think about this? Because I don't know if you understand what we are trying to do. It may not be happening in South Africa, but what do you think about a situation where attention and priority is not given to these two vital sectors of an economy? Talking about the education system, if you followed what's happening in Nigeria, or rather, we just read about a scenario in the academic sector, in the education sector, where in the last 6 months, there's been a strike action. So students have been at home for 6 months, and we're trying to spotlight the impact of such act by a government on the people, knowing that the human mind, just like the muscle, can only function as it's being used. The more you are using the human mind, the more it can grow and allow you to solve more problems. And the more you don't use it, you don't put the mind where it can think. Just like in the education system, what happens to the mind of young people who we believe are the future, are the people who should be solving the everyday emerging problems? What do you think about this scenario?
Felix, like I said, I missed the first part of your conversation. I think it was a technical issue. So please, if you could just bring it to context.
Okay, so the thing is that I just summarized what's happening. That in the past 6 months, the education system in Nigeria has been on shutdown. And we are trying to analyze the impact on the mind of the average young person who have to be taxed with academic work. You have to write quiz, you have to write exams, you have to write tests, for your mind to stay fresh and active, and for you to be able to learn, develop yourself, and contribute to societal growth. And now for 6 months, the entire nation has been on shutdown in the education system. Nobody is going to school. The lecturers are not going. No teachers is going to anywhere. What do you think will be the impact? What's your take on such a scenario, and what's the impact on the education space? Knowing that if the mind is not being taxed, it begins to grow weak and cannot produce results.
Yeah, I mean, it's so sad to learn about that. And I mean, personally, as an activist, I'm really saddened, and I believe that if children are denied education, and they have to stay for that long, which means that it will inhibit, their growth, and their development, personally, academically, and that will result in societal issues, yeah.
Well, I would say, in my own opinion, there's, in Nigerian context, there's difference between the schools are shut down, but trust me, Nigerian youths, a lot of them are involved in developing or educating themselves. We have grown beyond depending on what the government or these regular traditional institutions can offer us. A lot of young persons are involved in learning digital skills, relevant skills that have global relevance, like digital skills programming, tech. Some of them are the ones that are into art and culture. They're also developing their skills in that aspect. So I think the problem here, what I see stakeholders fail to realize is that they are yet to come to terms to understand what really we want as young people. Yes, they shut down the schools because of the policies and bureaucracy between the government and the stakeholders, the education and the relevant university unions. But the students or the youths in Nigeria, they've grown beyond that level. The government of Nigeria and these institutions are yet to catch up with what they want. So you can see a Nigerian saying, oh, I'm going to the university, I just want to get that paper certificate. They call it Spanley in local parlance. Spanley, I won't just get my Spanley in local parlance. Yeah. But if you watch what that person can do, it's beyond what he learned in the 4 walls of the university.
But I think my concern is that there is a government that is elected to solve problems. It is not supposed to be that you're giving, the young people are not supposed to have an alternative. You're supposed to give them options.
Everything, yeah. It
is not supposed to be a this or this. No. You're supposed to have this and this. So education is it's a no-brainer. You're not supposed to we're not supposed to come at a point where, I'm imagining a situation where you keep somebody in the house for 6 months and they are not able to access education. Now you're talking about people that are learning digital skill. What percentage of the number of young people that have been in the house for 6 months are currently learning digital skills? What I mean, are there this person that imagine somebody that is in Lagos learning digital skills in Lagos? Have you thought about the overwhelming majority, perhaps, that are not able to access the tools, that are not able to access internet, that are not able to access smartphones, that are not able to access power, they are not able to access some of all these gadgets and tools that enable them, that give them free access to this information? Yes, we know that a lot of people are beginning to break out to find alternative, which is not supposed to be the case. You have a government that have resources, that have access to, to provide you with everything. Now they remove everything from you and you have to fight. You have a lot of people who are having to now fight themselves to, listen, by God's grace, I'm studying abroad. But I tell you the truth, if the infrastructures are put in place, trust me, the places where we are studying is not better than, what would have been in Nigeria here. I study in a place where I don't have to pay for transportation to go to school. It's not rocket science to ensure that the roads, first of all, are very, very well taken care of. It's not rocket science to ensure that there are traffic systems, there are systems in place to make sure that the roads are good enough before you can even talk about buying the facilities. It's not rocket science to build a school and ensure that people can go there and they access quality education. But we make these things as if they are, when somebody builds a school or builds a road, we celebrate the person. So we're not supposed to have that. It's really very, very annoying. Like for me, even talking about it is very annoying because we don't know how much damage
it has done. Yeah.
It has done in terms of resources. If we want to equate the amount of money that has gone down the drain, imagine for every 1 hour somebody stays in the house without thinking creatively, an amount of money is lost, just like a fuel. Do you know how much money in wealth, in physical cash, in assets, in ideas that we have lost in 6 months from the number of students who are supposed to be in school thinking and solving problems? And so we have some problems that are prevailing right now, which probably could have been solved 3 months ago. But because the people who would have been solving that problem are currently in their houses, not thinking, not even being tasked, not being questioned about going to school, the problem has persisted for 6 months. I mean, I really like to think about these things as a scientist, about the law of cause and effect. So if this is happening, what are the consequences that people are not in school? What are the consequences that people are not able to access this education? What are the consequences that, people are not working, the lecturers don't have a job, you are not paying them salary? What do you want them to do?
As it stands now, I learned some lecturers are doing many jobs to survive.
It's
it's
crazy.
Wrong because someone that is supposed to use his time researching or going through project thesis or
is in many jobs. Imagine a lecturer is in many jobs.
Exert his energy on that, he won't be able. Then what output do you have? But my point is that those in the helm of affair, they've failed woefully to take leadership, to understand that you cannot develop a country beyond the kind of education the citizens, especially the young ones, have. Education is the tool in which you prepare the young ones for the nearest future.
It's a shame. So, Matthew, you're just smiling. Matthew, you're smiling.
I I'm actually following the conversation, right? I'm actually getting now the gist of the conversation, because now when I jumped in, I was a bit lost. But I just want to go back, Felix, to what you said earlier on about. It seems like, from your argument, you're centering the whole thing on the government. The onus does not only lies with the government. I completely agree with my fellow brother when he talks about involving the stakeholders. But I mean, as an activist, I am an inclusive education enthusiast. I say that education of children is not confined to the four walls of the classroom. So those children, even if they didn't go to school for that 6 months, there's supposed to be some teaching and learning, whether they have or they don't have resources, you understand? So we need to understand that we cannot put everything on the government. Already our government, throughout in Africa, they are failing us in terms of, education in particular.
But Matthew, we're talking about universities. We're talking about the universities.
We have lots of organizations that we need to collaborate with. I'm not sure. I cannot speak in the context of Nigeria, but I know, in my country, in South Africa, they try to, come up with ways to make sure that I'll refer to what happened during the pandemic, the outbreak of COVID-19. They find alternative ways to make sure that teaching and learning, it continues and it happens effectively, remotely so. Even if the children that were in marginalized community.
So Matthew, we're trying to talk about the university system. It's not the basic education. We're talking about the universities has been on shutdown for 6 months. What do you have to take on that? The university.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's really the same thing. I think, even with the universities, there are stakeholders. There are people that we need to like organizations that we can collaborate with to make sure that, for example, let me make an example with, I know a friend of mine, she just finished a teaching degree. And then I think for 2 years, she studied remotely. And then the universities, it collaborated with other organizations, and they managed to get some students that were in need. They managed to get them laptops and data so that they can study remotely.
Well, again, Matthew, what do you have to say on that? Yeah, there are systems for studying remotely, but we're also talking about even people that are in the cities. Actually, the major universities. In the major universities are, on shutdown. I understand what you're saying about providing with access to tools and all that, but who are the people that are going to provide this? Normally, government is supposed to be spearheading some of all these initiatives, because as an individual, there is really a limit to what you can do as an individual, right? Do you have access to enough resources? Do you have access to the willpower, the political willpower? You still need the government to be at the forefront. But I think that for such an amount of time to stay in a country such as ours, for 6 months, trust me, it's really not something to go about. Up next, we are going to be having Felix talk to us on the lessons from the 2022 general election in Kenya, the realities of our political arena. Up next, Felix.